I was standing in my beautiful lakeside cottage, looking out at the peaceful water through floor-to-ceiling windows, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jane, my daughter-in-law. I should have known better than to answer. "Martha, I'm calling to let you know that I'm bringing 20 people from my family to stay at your new place for 2 weeks. We'll be arriving this Friday. Make sure you have all the rooms ready and meals prepared. Oh, and don't embarrass us in front of my relatives. 20 people. Cook and clean for all of them." After everything I've done for this family, my hand was shaking, not from fear, but from pure rage. You see, there was a time when a call like this would have sent me into a panic. When I would have scrambled to please them, to make everyone comfortable, while I slept on the floor and emptied my bank account buying groceries. I closed my eyes and for just a moment, I was 19 again. 7 months pregnant, on my hands and knees scrubbing someone else's kitchen floor at midnight, because it was the only job I could get that would let me work around my other 2 jobs. My back aching, my hands raw, counting every dollar because I had a baby coming and no one to help me. But that was almost 50 years ago. I opened my eyes and looked around my cottage again. The marble countertops, the custom furniture, the deed with my name, and only my name on it. "Well, Jane," I said, my voice steady as steel, "let me tell you exactly what's going to happen when you arrive." But before I tell you what I said to her, and before I tell you how 20 entitled people got the shock of their lives when they walked through my door, you need to understand how I got here. How a pregnant teenager who had nothing became the woman standing in a $1 million cottage, finally ready to stop being everyone's servant. If you're ready to hear a story about what happens when the underestimated woman finally stops playing small, hit that subscribe button right now, because this journey is going to change how you see everything. But first, you need to know how I got here. And it starts with the hardest years of my life. It was 1987, when my world fell apart and rebuilt itself all at once. I was 19, 7 months pregnant, and the man I thought loved me left a note on my kitchen table saying he wasn't ready to be a father. Just like that, I was alone. 3 jobs. That's what it took to survive. I waitressed at Murphy's Diner from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, then cleaned offices until 6, and worked the night shift at the textile factory until midnight. I'd come home, sleep for 4 hours, and do it all over again. I remember falling asleep over my college textbooks, the ones I'd bought with my last $20, still believing I could somehow make it work. My hands were cracked and bleeding from all the cleaning chemicals, and my wallet was always empty. But I had Jones to think about. When Jones was born, I made him a promise while holding his tiny fingers in that hospital room. I promised him he'd never want for anything, even if it meant I had to go without everything. And I kept that promise. Oh, how I kept it. I missed his first-grade play because I had to work a double shift to pay rent. I mended his clothes by hand because buying new ones wasn't an option. I learned to make 1 box of mac and cheese feed us both for 2 days. When he asked why we couldn't go to McDonald's like other kids, I'd tell him we were saving money for something special. That something special was my quiet dream. Owning a little place by the water someday. Somewhere peaceful where Jones could bring his own children. I'd cut out pictures from magazines and tape them to our apartment walls. "Someday, baby," I'd whisper to him at night. "Mama's going to give you everything." 18 years later, I emptied every savings account I had, $43,000, to send Jones to college. It was worth every sacrifice when I watched him graduate with honors. Then he brought Jane home. The moment I met her, I knew she saw right through me. Designer clothes, manicured nails, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to choose between electricity and groceries. She looked at our modest apartment, at my work-worn hands, and I watched her make her judgment. "So you're the cleaning lady," she said the first time Jones introduced us. Not Jones's mother. The cleaning lady. But Jones was glowing when he looked at her, and I wanted my son to be happy. So I smiled and welcomed her with open arms. Their wedding cost me $12,000, money I borrowed against my retirement because Jane insisted on a real celebration. Her family treated me exactly like what Jane had called me, the help. They had me running around refilling drinks and cleaning up while they celebrated. I didn't even get to sit during the ceremony. I was too busy making sure everything was perfect for their perfect day. When my grandchildren were born, sweet little Emma and Tyler, I thought things would change. Instead, I became the unpaid nanny and maid. Jane would drop them off at 6 in the morning before work and pick them up after dinner. I'd feed them, bathe them, help with homework, and clean up after them. Every single day. "Martha, the kids need new school clothes." "Handle it," Jane would say, not ask. "Martha, we're having a dinner party. Come early to prep and stay late to clean." My son Jones, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, started changing. The demands got worse. Jane would call me at work with orders. Yes, orders about what needed to be done. And when I'd gently suggest maybe I could use some help or time off, she'd say things like, "Jones, your mother needs to learn her place in this family." And Jones? My Jones would just nod and look away. I started getting chest pains from the stress. My blood pressure spiked. The doctor told me I needed to slow down, but how could I? My family needed me. At least, that's what I told myself as I watched my son choose his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity, over and over again. By the time I turned 65, I was exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix, exhausted in my soul. But I kept giving, because that's what mothers do, right? We give until there's nothing left. I had no idea that the breaking point was coming. And when it came, it would change everything. My 65th birthday. I should have known what was coming when Jane insisted on planning the dinner herself. "Let me handle everything, Martha. You just show up." I arrived at the restaurant wearing my best dress, the one I'd bought for Jones's graduation 6 years earlier. The whole family was there. Jane's parents, her siblings, even some cousins I'd never met. I thought maybe, finally, they wanted to celebrate me. I was so incredibly wrong. Halfway through dinner, as I was telling a story about Jones as a little boy, Jane suddenly stood up and tapped her wine glass. "I have something to say," she announced, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "We've all been talking, and we think it's time we address the elephant in the room. Martha, you're getting older, and frankly, you're becoming a burden on this family." The words hit me like a physical blow. The entire restaurant seemed to go quiet. "Maybe it's time you moved to a senior facility," Jane continued, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Somewhere you can get the care you need without constantly depending on us. We've found some lovely places that accept Medicaid." I looked around the table. Jones's face was buried in his hands. He wouldn't look at me. Not one person spoke up. Not one person defended me. "We'll help you pack this weekend," Jane finished, sitting down like she'd just announced dessert. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out without saying a word. That night, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. I left a letter on Jones's pillow. "My dearest son, I'm giving you exactly what Jane asked for. Freedom from me. Don't look for me. I won't be found until I want to be." By morning, I was gone. I drove for 12 hours straight until I reached a small coastal town in Maine I'd seen in a travel magazine years earlier. I rented a tiny room above a bakery and took the first job I could find. Companion and housekeeper for an elderly widow named Alice Whitman. Alice was 87 years old and sharp as a tack. She'd built a real estate empire from nothing, starting with one small rental property in 1962. Within a week, she'd figured out my whole story. "You've spent your entire life making other people comfortable," she said one afternoon as we sat on her porch overlooking the ocean. "When was the last time someone asked what would make you comfortable?" I couldn't answer, because no one ever had. Alice became more than an employer. She became my teacher, my mentor, my friend. She showed me her business books, taught me about investments, about property management, about knowing my worth. For the first time in my life, someone saw intelligence in me, instead of just a pair of working hands. "You're not a servant, Martha," Alice would say. "You're a woman with a brilliant mind, who's been convinced she's only valuable when she's serving others. That stops now." For 2 years, Alice and I worked side by side. She taught me everything: how to negotiate, how to spot a good investment, how to carry myself with confidence. I learned to speak up, to set boundaries, to believe I deserved respect. I also learned what peace felt like. Watching the sunrise over the water each morning, I remembered that teenage girl with the magazine cutouts on her wall. The dream of a place by the water. Alice passed away in her sleep on a Tuesday morning in spring. She was 91, and she went peacefully. What I didn't expect was the reading of her will. She left me everything: the house, the business portfolio, the investment accounts, $2.3 million, and a lifetime of knowledge about how to use it wisely. "Martha has been more of a daughter to me than my own blood," the lawyer read from Alice's letter. "She deserves to spend the rest of her life being cherished instead of used." That's when I bought my cottage. The exact one from those magazine pictures I'd taped to my apartment walls 50 years earlier. Lake view, peaceful, perfect. I paid cash. For 6 months, I lived in blissful silence. No demands, no criticism, no one treating me like I existed to serve them. Just me, my books, my morning coffee on the deck, and the sound of water lapping against the shore. Then my phone rang. "Martha, I'm calling to let you know that I'm bringing 20 people from my family to stay at your new place for 2 weeks. Jane." Still treating me like the help, still assuming I'd drop everything to serve her family. "Of course, darling," I said, my voice honey-sweet. "Come on up." What Jane didn't know was that I wasn't the same woman who'd walked away from that birthday dinner. I immediately called my lawyer, arranged for security cameras to be installed, and hired a videographer to document everything. An hour later, my phone rang again. "Jones. Mom, I can't believe you're doing this for us. Jane's been telling everyone how generous you are, opening your home like this. We really appreciate it." Generous, that's what they were calling it. My cold realization hit like ice water. They assumed I was still the same pushover who'd serve them without question. If you're loving this story of transformation and you want to see how this confrontation unfolds, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to shock you. And tell me, have you ever had a moment where you realized people only valued you for what you could do for them, not for who you are? I have a feeling this story is hitting close to home for some of you. They had no idea what was waiting for them when they walked through my door. Friday morning arrived, and I was ready. I'd spent the week preparing, but not in the way they expected. Instead of stocking groceries and making beds, I'd been setting up cameras and consulting with my legal team. I dressed carefully that morning: a beautiful cream-colored silk blouse, tailored navy pants, and the pearl necklace Alice had given me. I looked like what I was, a woman of means. At exactly 11 o'clock, 3 cars pulled into my circular driveway. Through my window I watched 20 people pile out. Jane's parents, her siblings, cousins, even some people I didn't recognize. They were all looking around at my property with obvious surprise. Jane was the first to reach my front door. She didn't knock. She never had learned manners. She just walked right in like she owned the place. "Martha, we're here. Where should we put our—" "Oh." She stopped dead in her tracks. Instead of the flustered, apologetic woman she expected to find frantically preparing for their arrival, she found me sitting calmly in my leather armchair, sipping coffee from fine china, not moving to greet them. The rest of the family filed in behind her. And I watched their faces change as they took in my home. The marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the original artwork on the walls, the panoramic view of the lake through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Martha," Jane said slowly, "how did you afford this?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at her with the calm smile Alice had taught me. "The same way I afforded Jones's college tuition, your wedding, and 30 years of your disrespect, by being considerably smarter than you thought I was." The silence in that room was deafening. Jane's mother, Patricia, spoke up first. I don't understand. Martha, you were a cleaning woman. I was many things, I replied. I was a waitress, a factory worker, a housekeeper, a nanny. But most importantly, I was a woman smart enough to recognize an opportunity when one presented itself. Jones finally spoke from the back of the group. Mom, what are you talking about? So I told them about Alice Whitman, about the 2 years I spent learning business from one of the most successful real estate moguls in New England. I told them about the inheritance, about the investment portfolio, about the $2.3 million that was now mine, because someone finally saw my worth. Alice left me everything because I gave her what none of her blood relatives ever did. Genuine care, loyalty, and respect. Qualities this family taught me to value, but never showed me in return. Jane's face was turning red. That's impossible. You seduced some old woman into leaving you money. That's what happened. I laughed. Actually laughed. Jane, Alice was sharper at 90 than you'll ever be at 35. She left me her fortune because I earned it through 2 years of genuine companionship and hard work. But please, continue telling everyone what you really think of me. And that's exactly what Jane did. Right there in my living room, with all her family watching, she had a complete meltdown. This is ridiculous, she screamed. Martha, you're nothing. You're a servant. You exist to take care of other people, not to live in places like this. Jones, tell her. Tell her she can't talk to me like this. But Jones was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Jane kept going. You think you're better than us now? You think having money makes you important? You're still the same pathetic woman who scrubbed floors while pregnant. Money doesn't change what you are. What Jane didn't know was that every word was being recorded. The cameras I'd installed were capturing everything, her entitled rage, her cruel words, the way she truly saw me. Her own family was backing away from her, embarrassed by the display. Her cousin Sarah actually said, Jane, stop. You're being horrible. But Jane couldn't stop. Years of treating me like dirt. Years of feeling superior. Years of believing she could say anything to me without consequences. It all came pouring out. She's manipulating all of you. Can't you see that? She's not some successful businesswoman. She's a gold digger who tricked an old lady. Martha, tell them the truth. Tell them you don't belong here. I stood up slowly, and the room went quiet. You're absolutely right about one thing, Jane, I said, my voice steady and clear. I don't belong here. I belong somewhere much better than anywhere you'll ever be. That's when Jane completely lost it. She started screaming about how I'd stolen the money, how I was lying, how this was all fake. She actually tried to grab things off my mantelpiece, claiming I must have rented the place to impress them. Her own mother had to physically restrain her while the rest of the family watched in horror. This was Jane's true nature, finally exposed for everyone to see, and every single second was being captured on camera. After Jane's meltdown, the room split right down the middle. Her cousin Sarah was the first to speak. Martha, I am so sorry. I had no idea Jane treated you this way. This is disgusting. Jane's younger brother Mike stepped forward. Ma'am, I apologize for my sister's behavior. You don't deserve this. But Jane's parents and her older sister Karen immediately rallied around her. She's obviously upset, Patricia said. Martha, you can't blame her for being shocked by all this. Karen actually had the audacity to say, maybe if you'd been honest with the family about your situation instead of playing victim all these years, we could have avoided this scene. I watched this circus play out in my living room, but my eyes were on Jones, my son. The boy I'd sacrificed everything for. He stood there, silent, while his wife screamed accusations and his extended family chose sides. Finally, Jane turned to him, her face streaked with tears and rage. Jones, say something. Tell your mother she can't treat me like this. Tell her to apologize. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and hoping for simultaneously. After 30 years of watching him choose her comfort over my dignity, Jones had to make a choice. He looked at me for a long moment. I saw something in his eyes, maybe recognition, maybe regret. For just a second I thought my son might finally stand up for his mother. Then he spoke. Mom, maybe you should apologize. Jane's just overwhelmed. You know how she gets when she's stressed. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Jane's supporters looked uncomfortable. I felt something break inside my chest, but it wasn't my heart. It was the last chain that had been holding me to a family that had never truly valued me. I walked over to Jones and looked up at the man I'd raised, the man whose college education I'd paid for with my blood, sweat, and tears, the man who'd just chosen his wife's tantrum over his mother's dignity one final time. Jones, I said quietly, I raised you to be better than this. I loved you enough to let you choose who you wanted to be, and you chose. I pressed a button on my phone, and within 2 minutes, my security team was at the door. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the room, you have 30 seconds to collect your belongings and leave my property. Anyone still here after that will be arrested for trespassing. Jane started screaming again. You can't do this, Jones. Don't let her do this. But Jones just stood there, defeated and silent. The security team escorted all 20 people out of my home. Jane was still yelling threats as they put her in the car. Jones looked back once, but I'd already closed the door. That was 6 months ago. I'm sitting in my garden now, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. My tomatoes are coming in beautifully, and I've got fresh herbs growing in neat little rows. Alice would be proud. She always said gardening was good for the soul. I haven't heard from Jones since that day. Jane posted a few angry rants on social media about me, but they got taken down pretty quickly when people started asking questions about the videos that mysteriously appeared online, showing her true colors. The extended family members who apologized have reached out. Sarah sent me a beautiful card, and Mike actually drove up here to apologize in person. Some bridges can be rebuilt, but only when both people want to build them. Do I miss my son? Every single day. But I don't miss the woman I had to become to keep him in my life. I don't miss walking on eggshells, don't miss being treated like hired help, don't miss sacrificing my peace for other people's comfort. I spent 50 years being the person they needed me to be. Now I'm the person I needed me to be. And that, my dear viewers, makes all the difference. I wake up every morning in my beautiful cottage, make my coffee, and sit on my deck watching the water. No one demands anything of me. No one takes me for granted. No one treats me like I'm invisible. For the first time in my life, I matter to the person whose opinion matters most, me. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if your family treated you like hired help? Sometimes the hardest lesson to learn is that loving someone doesn't mean letting them disrespect you. The cottage is quiet now, peaceful, just the way I always dreamed it would be, and I've never been happier. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that subscribe button, because everyone deserves to know their worth.